Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, honorable speaker, and fellow students. We give you warmest welcome to the International Sharing Forum on Human Rights and Gender series entitled Business and Human Rights, Commitment to SDGs and Responsibilities for Communities. My name is Viona, alumni of Faculty of Law UIB, will act as your moderator for today's International Sharing Forum. I invite five of the speakers. Please welcome the first speaker, Assistant Professor Dr. Husham Alawsi from Gulf University, Sanat, Bahrain. And second speaker, Dr. Theresita V. Atienza from University of Quezon City, Philippines. Third speaker, Mrs. Ninne Zahara Silviani from Faculty of Law Universitas Internasional Batam. And fourth speaker, Associate Professor Rina Shahrullah Ph.D. from Faculty of Law Universitas Internasional Batam. And fifth speaker, Ms. Kayla Winarsky McKenzie from the Assoc Human Rights Working Group, USN. And last but not least, please welcome to the other lecturer from Faculty of Law UIB who attend this International Sharing Forum. Let's move on the first session, opening remarks from Ms. Nukila Evanty, the head of Women Working Group Indonesia. The room is yours.
Thank you, Moderator Viona. Welcome participants and outstanding panelists to the 14th series International Sharing Forum on Gender and Human Rights, focusing on the themes of business and human rights, commitment to SDGs, and for responsibilities for communities. I would like to thank the Women's Study Centers of Universitas Internasional Batam, UIB, and the ASEAN Studies Center of Batam of the University International Batam, UIB, for their partnership in organizing this forum. The Business and Human Rights Agenda, as we are aware, and Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, are intrinsically linked or interlinked. The UN Guiding Principle on Business and Human Rights, or UNGPs, highlights that business have responsibility to respect human rights, which align with the SDGs ambition to realize the human rights overall. Many of the SDGs, particularly those related to, for instance, SDG number 1, poverty, we still facing many poor people do not have access to, for instance, to the houses, right? And then there is also the issue of hunger, SDG number 2. We still facing the issues of those people who do not have access to the food, food security. And then there is an issue of on SDG regarding the health. In fact, we still observe that there are many people in part of the world, particularly in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Asia, they are still facing, for instance, malnutrition. Children facing stunting. So there's the issue of the health. And then education, for instance. We dealing so far with the issue of the people do not have access to the basic education. People are educated, but they lack of literacy. So this also the challenge of SDGs, yeah. And then gender equality, SDGs number 5. In fact, we are still facing the issue of the, for instance, discrimination based on age, discrimination based on gender, and then women are facing abuse, not only in the public sector, but also in domestic affairs. So this is the issue of the SDGs. And decent work. We are see in our daily life that so many people do not have the job, unemployed, because for instance there is lack of education. If you want to get a job, we need to educate ourselves, right? So this is also the issue of the SDGs. So all these indicator of disease output of the SDGs have direct human rights implication that businesses can impact, right? Now is 2025. The SDGs must be achieved by 2030, 5 years more. So we need to let's hear from the expert opinion here from our panelists. We have here Professor Associate Professor Rina Shahrullah, PhD from Universitas Internasional Batam, and then Miss Ninne Zahara Silviani from Universitas Internasional Batam. We have Miss Kayla Winarsky McKenzie, and then Dr. Theresita V. Atienza. Sorry if I misspelled the name. And Dr. Husham Alawsi. So we have all the expert panelists. So I hope you enjoy listening and enjoy this discussion. And I'll hand over the time now to the moderators.
Thank you, Ms. Nukila Evanty, for your opening remarks. Now let's get into the main discussion. Let me introduce you the first speaker, Ms. Ninne Zahara Silvani, is Secretary of Master of Law Program Universitas Internasional Batam and the head of ASEAN Studies Center Universitas Internasional Batam. To Mrs. Nide, the time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Fiona, as our moderator. Okay. Thank you so much for the all the speakers and also the moderator and the participants. My name is Nina Zahara, and currently I am also the head of ASEAN Studies Center in Universitas Internasional Batam. And today I have my presentation as as it comes from the group publication in a book chapter between me, Ibu Rina Shahrullah, the alumni Kendri, and also the lecturer from University Malaya, Ibu Hakimah, Miss Hakimah Muhammad Sin. And in this presentation, I would like to take the title about adapting the United Nations Global Compact principles in Malaysia and Indonesia. As our title of seminar today is about business and human rights. When we talk about business now, recently we are not separated from the human rights. So when we do business, that's a lot of impact to the human rights sector. Yeah, it could cause the environment. It could give the environment loss to the some people in some region. So even the business companies, yeah, every sector of economy need to apply the UNGC principle to implement the human rights principles itself. So, what is UN Global Compact? And UNGC is a UN initiative encouraging business worldwide to adopt a sustainable and socially responsible policies, and it offers a moral and strategic roadmap to achieving, yeah, a responsible business conduct. So, is it have a 10 principles? We can talk about that after this slide, and it's not like the uh yeah, because it is a soft law in the United Nations. UNGC is considered as a soft law. It's not perfect legally binding, but it serves as a global ethical framework for business behavior. So it can be a roadmap, and it can also be the guidance to the companies and business members uh to implement and also respect the human rights of everybody. Members commit to aligning strategies with universal principles and contributing to societal goals. Okay. And the 10 principles of UN Global Compact, the UNGC, it has the first two principles is talking about the human rights, that business should support and respect the protection of international human rights within their sphere of influence. And the second one is make sure their own corporation are not complicit in human rights abuse. Yeah. And then in the labor sector, yeah, they have some four principles. That first, business should uphold the freedom of association and the effective recognition of the rights of collective bargaining, the elimination of all forms of forced and compulsory labor, and also the effective abolition of child labor. Also, and the sixth principle is the elimination of discrimination in respect of employment and occupation. Yeah, it's also still represent the human rights, but in labor sector. And next, in environment sector, that business should support a precautionary approach to environmental challenges. And the eighth principle is undertake initiative to promote greater environmental responsibility. And ninth principle is encourage the development and diffusion of environmentally friendly technologies. And the tenth principle is about anti-corruption, that business should work against corruption in all its forms, including extortion and bribery. Yeah, it's support the cleanliness of the business. Now, how about we talk about the UNGC implementation? We can see it in the CSR. Yeah, in the corporate social responsibilities. Yeah, UNGC strengthens CSR by offering a structured global framework for responsible business conduct. And also, companies can integrate the UNGC principles, the 10 principles before, into the CSR initiatives for profit, people, and planet. Yeah, and also in Indonesia, CSR is mandated under our the law number 40 of year 2007. It's about the sorry the it's called hukum perusahaan, yeah, but is it companies law. I forget the legal terms of it. Maybe we can correct it after. And UNGC complements this regulation with global alignment. And in Malaysia itself, CSR is encouraged through voluntarily reporting, supported by Bursa Malaysia and National Framework. And UNGC is a driver for SDGs. Yeah, so the UNGC principles, UNGC programs is supporting the SDGs, almost a 17 point of it. And UNGC supports companies in achieving SDGs through its platform and principles, so the business can go on sustainable. And the second one, the corporation joining UNGC gain access to network, capacity building, and global dialogues on sustainability. And also the third is the UNGC promotes 17 SDGs points, such as poverty alleviation, climate action, education, and all of the sectors. And then Indonesian government must regulate CSR programs endorsed by UNGC to provide legal certainty. Um, uh, Obviously, for now, Indonesia is not under ratification yet, but we can also implement the principles. We don't have really bound to uh, the agreement itself, but we can implement and we can adopt the principles to our CSR program in all the business sector. So this is when we can see the differentiation between the implementation of UNGC in Malaysia and Indonesia. And the left one is the Malaysia. Malaysia established the Malaysian Global Compact Network, or MCGN, as the local chapter of UNGC. And also the government integrates UNGC. The government of Malaysia integrates UNGC in national strategies such as the 11 and 12 Malaysia plans, green technology master plans itself. And Bursa Malaysia requires sustainability reporting aligned with ESG principles. So they are further moving forward than us, yeah, actually. And the MGCN support SMEs via the ESG hub and sustainability training programs. Yeah, the ESG is the environmental social governance So the ESG principles will align with the UNGC. And then for Indonesia itself, Indonesian Global Compact was launched in 2006 as a UNGC local chapter. Yeah, we could implement it ourselves. And CSR is a mandatory in Indonesia, and UNGC offers a structured path for companies to meet legal and ethical standard. IGCN promotes dialogue among business, academia, and civil society, and companies benefit from global forums, learning programs, and ESG tools like the ESG Starter Toolkit. So ESG also enhancing in around the business in all over the world, and we could apply the UNGC principles to develop more better ESG and CSR itself. And how about the future prospects for corporate sustainability? So, the digitalization will enhance CSR implementation, stakeholder engagement, and also the ESG tracking. Both countries, either Indonesia or Malaysia, are expanding online platforms to facilitate corporate participation in UN Global Compact. And then integration of CSR into core business strategy is key to long-term sustainability. Yeah. And then the last future direction includes stronger regulation, more inclusive SMEs, participation, and technological innovation. So for the future prospect, after the future prospects of corporate sustainability, we could talk about the role of stakeholders in advancing UNGC principles. So it could include the government, the business society, the civil society, and we need to the synergy and the cooperation between the three of it. Governments could strengthen the CSR policies, provide the infrastructure and also the coordination. So the business the business sector, the business owner could have uh, a roadmap, a guidance from the government to do the CSR based on the needs of the states, based on the needs of the country and the society. So the business would not be like don't know what to do or doing something that unnecessary. Uh they could impact the society and doing the CSR based on the needs. And for the civil society, could monitor the CSR implementation and foster public-private collaboration. This is not only by the civil society like the people, but also to can be contributed by the academic sector, can also by the NGO. So all the civil society will monitor the CSR implementation. We could take critics, or we could involve maybe like a comment or to reminding the business owner to integrate the UNGC in their CSR actively. So it could create a synergy among the stakeholders to ensure more impactful and targeted sustainability efforts. Okay, maybe that's all the presentation that I could explain about my presentation. So I hope it could impact the business and human rights. Thank you. I'll give it back to the moderator.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Ninne, for your presentation. So I can conclude that there are 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, and UNGC is a driver for SDGs. Stakeholders also have role in advancing UNGC principles. Now let me introduce you to the second speaker, namely Associate Professor Rina Shahrullah, Ph.D. Associate Professor Rina is an Associate Professor at the Master of Law Program Universitas Internasional Batam and Head of Women's Studies Center Universitas Internasional Batam. To the second speaker, you have 15 minutes to present your material. Time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Viona. Okay, let me share my part. Okay, yeah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon to all of you, and probably some of the audience here is already evening or even morning if they are from the United States of America. Okay, I would like to discuss about the indigenous women. Yeah, this is our project actually with Mbak Nukila, and this project is going to be implemented soon for the training, but I would like to give an overview about the reality in the field about the fate of indigenous women in the coastal regions. In particular, we focus on the Rempang Island, Batam City. So I'm Rina Shahrullah. I am from the Women's Studies Center, Universitas Internasional Batam. So let's see Indonesia. Indonesia has the indicator and then also the law, which is focused on the business and human rights. Okay, probably Ibu Ninne is already explained about United Nations Global Compact, but it hasn't been touched about the UNGP, United Nations Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. But then the other speakers are going to discuss about it. So in Indonesia, when we talk about business and human rights, we have the presidential regulation number 60 of 2003 on national strategy for business and human rights. And it's also have the special application for the business to check whether the business is already comply with this regulation, or whether the business has not yet complied with the regulations. Okay, so it has like three color: the green color, the red color, and the yellow color. Later I will discuss about that. But this, we call it PRISMA, is penilaian risiko business and HAM. And if it's in Indonesia, we talk about, we will translate it as the evaluation on the risk of business and human rights. We call PRISMA. Okay, it's actually an application that helps the business to analyze the alleged risk of human rights violations which causes by business activities. As we know that the business cannot avoid themselves by arguing that they are simply seek for profits, but they can avoid about the human rights. No, they have to comply with the human rights, because international instruments, international legal instruments are very strong, okay, imposing, and also the national law also supported the implementation of business and human rights. So in PRISMA, if like a company would like to know whether it has violated the human rights or comply with the human rights, there are 12 indicators, okay, provided in PRISMA. Okay, and then the first is human rights policies, labor, working condition, trade unions, privacy, discrimination, environment, agrarian, or we call it land, okay, and indigenous peoples, corporate, social, and environmental responsibilities, or CSR, grievance mechanisms, supply chains, and human rights impacts for companies. So the companies, this is a free and open to everybody if they would like to register, okay, and to check whether their company is already comply with the human rights implementation. So in PRISMA, because it's a self-assessment for the companies, there are, as I mentioned before, there are three categories. The first is red, which is color red, meaning the score, okay, after they check all this and then put their assess their company, and then if it's the red color, meaning not enough, okay, and yellow is sufficiently suitable, yeah, and then green is confirming. So we expect that all these green or confirming with the human rights. But this is a new application for Indonesia, and also this is voluntarily based. It's not yet mandatory based. So it's up to the companies whether they would like to use this and to check, or if they already joined to United Nations Global Compact, like what Ibu Ninne mentioned before, is actually cover these all indicators in PRISMA. So let's see, okay, before I talk about what happened in Rempang, okay, this is started with the presidential regulation number 60 of 2023 on national strategy for business and human rights. But there's an new argument today that has been not in the list of national strategic project. But then this is the base for what happened that I'm going to explain later in the case of Rempang. Okay. So the reality here, okay, we can see that when we talk about indigenous people, because the Rempang, the people or the inhabitants in Rempang, most of them are indigenous people. And then how are we going to differentiate between indigenous people and customary law communities is quite different in Indonesia. But okay, Indonesia is one of the country that's actually adopted, okay, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, or UNDRIPS, which was adopted on the 13th September 2007. Now, Indonesia support and signed this declaration, so it's a morally binding, politically binding for Indonesia to comply with the UNDRIP. Okay, but it's unfortunate that Indonesia has not ratified ILO Convention number 169, which is focused on the Indigenous and Tribal People Convention. Okay. Again, I would like to say that UNDRIP discuss about indigenous people, but in Indonesia, not all indigenous people are customary law communities, because it has a different impact and consequences when a community is declared as customary law communities. Now, what is indigenous people, okay, in Indonesia? In Indonesia, indigenous people are groups of people who are, okay, hereditary customs and traditions, as well as strong ties to their territory and environment. They may not have formal recognition as legal subjects in the state legal systems. Okay, this is quite a problem because there are many indigenous people in Indonesia. But then there's another group, okay, which is customary law communities. This is indigenous people whose existence is recognized in the state and have rights and obligations within the positive legal system. They have a clear legal standing and can participate in legal processes. So most of people say, well, Indonesia consists of indigenous people, but whether these indigenous people are customary law communities, it should be declared or recognized by the law. Okay? So this is quite the difference. But what happened in Batam City? So before we talk about Rempang, I would like to talk about the old villages in Batam City. So in Batam City, we have old villages. Old villages meaning because there's the traditions and the people there, indigenous people there live there, and then the government, several of the villages has been certified as the old villages by the government. So there are 7 villages. Okay, I'll just read it here. Tanjung Riau, Seibinti, Tanjung Undap, Nongsa Pantai, Punggur, Tiang Wangkang, and Tanjung Piayu Laut. So these 7 has been given, okay, the recognition and has been certified as all villages. So if it's all villages, what is the legal status? Okay, so it's provide legal certainty regarding the lands for the residents of the old villages. So this is quite different because as we see that even Rempang is included of the old villages, but is not yet got the certification from the government. Meaning here is recognized by the mayor of Batam City. So the question is whether Rempang Island is old villages. Because if it's old villages, we can, say that it has a special status. Okay. So if we look at the legal basis and history, we see here the decree from the mayor of Batam City, okay, which issued in 2004, and Rempang Island is included in the old villages, but it's not yet certified, meaning there's no land certification giving to the people there. Okay, so number and the locations, there are 45 villages on Rempang are recognized as part of Batam Old Villages. Okay, so the villages are in Sembulang. I think Mbak Nukila often visit Sembulang, Dapur 6, okay, Rempang Cate, Tanjung Banon, and the others part of Rempang area. And what happened with the legal status? Because the old Rempang villages are recognized, and so it should be protected as part of the cultural heritage and customary law communities. So remember, when we talk about all villages, it's quite different from the other urban or rural area, which is not considered as all villages under the decree of Mayor Batam City Mayor. Okay. But the problem is that the special document of Batam 2021 to 2041, and in the development practice, we call it Rempang Eco City, these old villages areas are designated as industrial areas, which then trigger agrarian or land conflicts and relocations of residents. So this is, the clash, okay, between the recognition, okay, under the law itself, but there's another document, which is the special document of Batam, which is really close. So if we talk about Rempang case, there's a business versus human right, because it's triggered by the regulation number 6 of 2023, which is issued by the Coordinating Ministry for Economic Affairs of the Republic Indonesia. Okay, so in this regulation stated about the Indonesian National Strategic Project. And then the investors are two types of investors: the national investors, which is PT Makmur Elok Graha, and then also the foreign investors, Sini Group, so from China. So these investors coming to Rempang and would like to establish what we call Rempang Eco City. Because of the establishment, it's not yet making the factory, okay, but there's already a lot of mass displacement, okay, and which is the project will displace 7,000 to 10,000 residents from 16 villages in Rempang area. And then livelihood impact, most residents are fisher folks, okay, and farmers, and conflict with authorities, because it's been until now, the clashes broke out since September 7, 2023, and then between the residents and joint military and police forces. So we can see here that the business, the investment, both national investors and foreign investors, because they are want to make Rempang Eco City and classes with the indigenous people, the local people living in that area. So the women, okay, in this area already voiced out, okay, how they would like to positioning themselves. Some of them, okay, would like to stay, okay, and some of them would like to move, because the government of Batam is actually provide the relocation area for them. But then we will see that there are many incidents occurring in Rempang Islands because of this project. So we see that the land grabbing, okay, and also the attacks of indigenous communities, okay, which affecting about 90 victims through criminalization, intimidation, and violence. Okay, and then also when you can see here the picture here, this is a protest from the Rempang people who don't want to be relocate to the new place area. And then this is the new development on the Rempang, because there are two pro and contra from the community, but even in the law itself is quite interesting, because some still claim, from the government side, still claim that actually Rempang, it's still within the national strategic project. But the other claims that Rempang is no longer within the national strategic project. Okay, so Batam, BP Batam, this is the management of Batam, the agency managing Batam, stated that Rempang Eco City is still included, okay, in the national strategic project, based on the appendix of president's regulations. Okay, and then also the chairman of the House of the Representative also say that it still remains as the national strategic project. And even the coordinating ministry also say that project continues to receive serious attention, even though it's not listed, because the new government regulation, in particular the president, okay, regulation is not listed Rempang under the 77 national strategic project, but they still say that, well, it's an investment and still guided by the central government. So there's also a claim saying that Rempang Island is no longer national strategic project, based, okay, on the statement of the commission. This is from the House of the Representatives, stated that Rempang Eco City was not included in the presidential regulation number 12 of 2025. So there are two, opinions regarding the implementation and interpretation of presidential regulation, okay, of 12 into 2025. Some says that still, okay, Rempang is a national strategic project, but the others, okay, in contrast, say that it's no longer in the list, so it's not included as the national strategic project. But whatever, okay, whether they pro or contra regarding the status of Rempang, we see that women in that area face multi-barriers to resources, services, and opportunities. Okay, so they voice out the problem of these women, especially indigenous women in the coastal area of Rempang. Okay, they voice out how they feel about this situation, because they are not really getting the attention from the government, because the government of Batam City would like to all of them to move to the new location, even though they don't call it as forced relocation, they call it voluntary local transmigration. But still, okay, whether the women would like to stay there or, okay, move to the new location, they face these hindrances. So when we see the women itself, or the people, indigenous people, okay, in Rempang, they are pro and contra. They divided into groups, okay. So we visited there, okay, and we interview those who are pro for the Rempang Eco City. They say that Rempang is not the customary law communities, so they don't get the certificate because they are not. They are actually they are the old village, but not yet included in the mayor circulation or the mayor regulation, saying that they will be given a land certificate. So they have no certainty relating to the land certificates. And then Batam city governments give the ownership. So this is, if they move to this area, okay, Tanjung Banon, the Batam city government will give them building, houses, and also land certificates, okay. This is the location area. This is the type of their house, okay. And then the women there say that, well, they would like to be economically independent. Until now, there are about 117 families or 409 people already relocated or moved to the Tanjung Banon. Tanjung Banon is located in Galang. Yeah, it's another district. Okay, it's not in Rempang. And this is the woman empowerment, because when we discuss what is really the willingness of the women there, they would like to be independent, economic independent. So that's why we will plan, okay, to make a training, eco-print, okay, business model, gardening, farming, which is sponsored by the CSR of the investor with the business, the PTMEC, and then also supported for the training by the Women's Muslims group here. Okay. So what about the contra? Those who don't want to move. You can see the house here. Part of the houses is actually built in the sea. Okay. And then when we interview those who are contra, we are not in favor of moving to the new area or the relocation area. They say that the land of their ancestors, they would like to live and die there. And then they're concerned about job security, because most of them are fisher folks, and then they say if they move to the new area, it's quite far from the sea, and you can see how the house here is built on the sea, and then here is on the land, and it's quite far from the sea. So they're concerned about adapting to new environment, but still, interestingly, both, whether they are pro or contra on the Rempang Eco City, the women still wishes to be economically independent. So what is that Mbak Nukila's organizations and then from UIB has done? We make a women's training by giving them training how to make fish products, and then this is sponsored by the Inisiasi Masyarakat Adat by Mbak Nukila's organizations, and then supported the trainer from the my university, Universitas Internasional Batam. So that's the reality in the field right now. What happened about the fate of the women as indigenous women in Rempang? As I mentioned, there are two groups. Okay, some of them would like to move to the new relocation area, and some still insist to stay in their own land. They don't want to move to new houses and new relocation. But whoever they are, whether they favor or unfavor of the Rempang Eco City, they still have the same wishes. They would like to be economically independent. So before I end, I would like to say, let's help women in Rempang to be economically independent, regardless of their personal opinions on the Rempang case. Thank you so much. Back to you, moderator.
Okay, thank you, Associate Professor Rina, for your presentation. So I can conclude that in Indonesia, not all indigenous people are customary law communities, and there are 37 old villages in Batam and 7 is certified. And regarding Rempang Eco City, there are pro and contra in regarding the Rempang Eco City. While waiting for the other speaker, there are several questions for Mrs. Ninne. So the first is, can civil society do more than monitor CSR implementation and foster private-public partnership? And the second question is, what are the challenges of implementation UN Business Global Compact in Indonesia compared with the Malaysia? So Ms. Ninne, the time is yours to answer the question.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Viona. Maybe these questions could be supported by Ibu Rina as well, because he is the one, the main initiator, and also I learned a lot about the UNGC is actually from her. And can civil society do more than monitor CSR implementation to foster private public partnership? So maybe like civil society and like the academia, like NGO, they are practically become some people who watch the practice of the CSR implementation. They could not only watch, but they also can include, they also can contribute as the collaboration team on the CSR of any business, and a business owner, like they can also maybe like if the CSR will be done by some the big companies, and they will involve the civil society not only to monitor, they can also invite the civil society to practice the CSR uh, implementation. So maybe if they ask, does can civil society do more than a monitor the CSR implementation? Yes, they can also let's say it's involved in the CSR implementation of the business owner, and also the maybe all the big companies CSR implementation. And what are the challenges of implementation UN Business Global Compact in Indonesia compared with Malaysia? Maybe the challenges in the, if I could take a look, maybe it's from the regulation. We have implemented this CSR program in our company's law, in our corporate law. Sorry, it's a corporate law. That's it. That's we have regulate the CSR under corporation law, but from some aspects in UNGC there are some updates updates guidance, the updates guidance, and we are not really seeing it in the in our country, in Indonesia. Especially maybe we can take a look from the SMEs, the small micro enterprise, how the UN Global Compact, how the CSR that could be implemented by the small micro enterprise. Yeah, for all time, the CSR in Indonesia was obligated to the big companies, with the corporate that have maybe called limited corporation. But how about the CSR that should be implemented by the small micro enterprise? I think if what kind of challenges that happens to implement the UN Business Global Compact is maybe on the SMEs. Maybe that's all from me. I hope that I can get more insight the about the implementation of UN Business Global Compact. Thank you.
Okay, probably I can add on it, Bu Ninne. Yeah, okay, because when we talk United Nations Global Compact is actually our collaborative, publication together with Ibu Ninne and also one of the professors from UITM. Okay, so yes, this when we talk about the civil society, okay, the civil society has a very important roles, okay, in monitor the CSR. Okay, and if when we look at it, how the important, we will see that the CSR it's not mandatory for the small companies. It's only mandatory mostly in Indonesia for the big companies, mining companies in particular. So when we see the UNGC, most of the companies there are big companies. No, there's no, small or micro, corporations or small entrepreneurs. Oh, yeah. Okay, I have to stop because Professor Husham Said is already here. Hello, Professor.
Hi,
Yes.
do you
Okay.
hear me,
Okay.
guys?
Now. Okay. Now. Okay. Back to Fiona. Probably later we will discuss. Okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Now let me introduce you the third speaker, namely Assistant Professor Dr. Husham Alawsi. Assistant Professor Dr. Husham Alawsi is Assistant Professor at Legal Studies Department, College of Law Gulf University, Sanad, Bahrain. To the third speaker, you have 15 minutes to present your material. Time is yours.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, my colleagues, and thank you to Dr. Ania for inviting me for such pleasing opportunity. So, first of all, I just would like to present my topic, which is a linking between the human rights and business together. So in order to to talk a little bit about what are the effects of the business on the human rights. We can say that widespread human rights, violations, which is linked to the corporate activities and which is linked to the weak due diligence practices, which is globally more than
Langkah ya bang.
50 millions, individuals are impacted by the human rights violations, which is connected to the corporate activities. And a few then, more than a few than 10% of the companies implement through the human rights due diligence to the, for example, HRDC, mechanisms which is across their operations. So according to the Business and Human Rights Resources Center, which is and the United Nations Rights Council reports. These abuses are not insolidated, incidents, but systematically, pretend that cut across industries. And the scope of these violations includes, let's say, force and exploitations of labor and supply mechanisms or chains. So millions of workers, especially in the sector like agriculture and electronics, and are subjected to the exploitative and the conditions, including child labor, for example, and bonded labor. Let's has as an example in 2022 investigations by the center by PHRC, which is reveals that workers are in Bangladesh, for example, and Myanmar, for example, where less than half the legal minimum wages, which is have to be implemented in order to union activities. So this kind of hazards an unsafe working environment. Industries disaster such as collapse in 2013, which is killed over than for example, workers, 100 workers in Bangladesh, which is undercrossed the fatal consequences. So let's say, to give as an introduction regarding to the moral strategic imperative, for example, why the human rights matter in business. And sometimes we can ask ourselves, the moral and strategic and the global imperative, like, for example, business impact human lives in far-reach ways, not only through their relationships and with the, workers and consumers, but also shaping the well-being of entire communities, whether through the land use, supply chains, digital platforms, corporate decisions, all these matters, and in short, let's say, in respect of for the human rights dignity must be negotiable, or let's say it's not non-negotiable foundations of all business conduct. So it's as rules or as a principles, all the human rights principles should be implemented in the workers' environment or works. So the strategic imperative, let's say, interrogating human rights, is not just ethical obligations, but it is in the other way strategic necessity, for today's global markets. And for example, legal risk, which is governments are increasingly, adopting mandatory, human rights due diligence works. And for example, UA corporate sustainability due diligence directive, and non-compliance can lead to fines, lawsuits, and exclusions from the public prosecutions. And also, on the other hand, reputational risk, public, labor abuses, environment harm, and data, breaches, which is repeatedly, suffering the consumer, in terms of trust, and investor confidence. And for example, this is affecting the reputations, as a consequence for not following, the main principles for the strategic, of the human rights. So also the other parallel, let's say, financial risk, which is company exposes the to social conflict, workforce, litigations, often forced by project delays, for example, and regulatory, setbacks and markets volatility, So these businesses are uphold the human rights and attract values aligned with investors. So, as an example, companies like which is have to earn strong reputations and loyal consumer bases, by embedded ethical practices into their core operations. Regarding to the global imperative, which is achieving the SDGs, the United Nations Sustainability, Development Goals, which is regarding to the SDGs, from gender equality and decent work and reduce, or let's say, strong institutions cannot be realized without meaningful private sectors like engagement. Corporations play really a vital role in shaping the global economy. And their alignment with the principle of justice, equity, sustainability are essential for, it's all essential for, let's say, inclusive, development. So the other key message which is I want to mention regarding to the reframe, of the business success, or how to definition or to give the definitions of the business success. As we know in today works, like the company's success is no longer measured by the financial performance alone, but it's really yes. Sorry, should I continue or
Yeah, sure, sure. Shall continue.
sorry.
Okay, just the voice over. Thank you.
Okay. So let's say, regarding to the how we define the business success, as I mentioned, it's something linked with safeguards, environment and the contributions to the social well-being. So why this matter, or why this shift matters, let's say regarding to the SDGs, is the new standards, which is regarding to the environment, social and governments, or governance, regarding to the reporting, which has become really like investors and stakeholders, which is now analyze, the SDGs, which is as a key indicators, for their company realizations, and ethics and long-term value. So the other matters which, as I want to mention in this regards, like stakeholders, expectations and rising consumer demands, fair, which is like labor practices and transparency, regulations or regulatory, which is oversight, the through the mandatory due diligence law. So investors are integrating social responsibility into the capital allocations decisions. The human rights are really essential to sustainability. No business can consider ethical or sustainable if it is contributes to the labor explosions, environment, which is really matters to the privacy and dignity. So the human rights are not something to do with, or it's really linked to their core legal compliance, which is considered as a brand reputations and the operational, dignity. So how we reframe the core challenges regarding to the compliance to these commitments. So let me just pose the central questions that should guide our conversations, like in today webinar, which is how we can or how can business involve from the reactive compliance to the proactive responsibility, or how do we move beyond the checklist and reporting templates, which is instead embedded the human rights and core of the corporate strategy, and as a mindset and just mandate. This isn't just ethical questions, but it is reflects the growth of recognitions that short-term risk management, which is no substitutes for long-term value, which is creations based on the principle of dignity, equity, and justice. So global commitments, which is aligning business with universal standards. The human rights in business are not a matter of internal policy or preferences or brand reputations alone. No, they are really a part of international ethicals of accountability, and sustainable development among the other keys, which is for the framework. For example, the United Guides guidance, regarding to the principle of the human rights of and business rights, which is adopted enormously, by the Human Rights Council in 2011, which is established the global recognitions like protect and respect and remedy framework. So this is outline the state's duty to protect, to regarding to the corporate responsibility to respect their needs, for effective access, to these remedies for the one or the for the suffered or the harms. So the OECD, guidelines, which is regarding to the enterprises, these legal non-binding yet to the standards, which is business to avoid, causing or contributing, to adverse impact on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corporations, and to conduct, due diligence throughout their various chains. So sustainable development goals, which is SDGs, human rights are the heart, of the agenda of 2030, for example, in Bahrain. So SDGs, for example, number 8 and SDGs number 10, which is decent work, reduce, for example, risk environment, directly linked to the business conduct to the global justice without any corporate engagement. The SDGs cannot be achieved. So together, of these SDGs, regarding to this SDGs number 5, which is gender equity, as I mentioned, and decent work and so on. These together consider as an instrument, to transform the human rights from abstract ideas to or into operational obligations, which is let's say altogether in laying to the legal risk management. This help together, in order to regarding to the let's say achieve the also the investors and the government's guidance and expectations. So regarding to the guidance principles, there is three parallels I can just lay on in this presentation, which is first of all the state's duty to protect. The first parallel, which is mean that the states bear the primary, responsibility to protect individuals against the human rights abuses, which is include these caused by business enterprises. So the governments must take, proactive, measures in order to prevent or let's say investigate or punish and reduce abuses. So this duty, we can say it's go through the legislatures, for example, regarding in linking to the labor laws, health, also safety guidelines or regulations, and also it can go through the public policies, like for the anti-discriminations and the equity framework. Also, it's through the other, which is considered as a judicial and administrative system, which is courts and so on. So this is as an example. The other parallel, which is I can rely on, which is a corporate responsibility to respect. So how the corporate responsibility to respect, business have to responsibility to respect all the internationally recognized human rights through their operations, of course. So whether or not the states fulfill its own duty, this responsibility means that not causing and contributing to the human rights harm and addressing a negative impact when they occur. So a human rights due diligence, which requires companies to identify a potential human rights risk and prevent and mitigate, those risks and track performance. I mean, tracking all the performance regarding to the recovery or the in order to prevent these or those risks. Also to communicate with how the impact and addresses. So this is must cover all the value chain and including suppliers, contractors, and business partners, and not just direct operations. So increasingly, the government are enacting laws and mandates, for example, to these principles. As an example, Germany's Supply Chain Act, which is drafted the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This is regarding to the parallel too. So regarding to the last parallel in this point, which is regarding to the access to remedy. This is really important in order to remedy all the harms which is suffered by the workers or whatever has a get damages. So when the corporate related to the business occur or abuses occur to the labors, for example, which is affecting individual and communities, must have access to the effective, remedies, mechanisms. Both states and companies share responsibility, in ending remedies. For example, justice or judicial remedies, non-judicial remedies, and the state-based, which is also the other mechanism. So judicial remedies, which is through national courts and legal system, and non-judicial remedies regarding to the such as companies level, which is agreements mechanisms, which is independent serves, mediates, or the mediation, or international arbitration, and so on. So these effective remedies must be, transparent, accessible, timely and rights, competitive, or let's say competitive. So there is many cases, but I think I have no time, to go through these cases one by one. So I still have time, right?
Yes, yes, sir. You can continue.
Okay, okay. So this regarding to these three parallels, which is linked between business and human rights, in my point of view, which is we can link between the human rights and the environment work and how to implement and the access to the remedies, which is we can achieve the main principle in the human rights. So regarding to the other guidelines, which is have been adopted in 2023 regarding to the enterprises, the core principle and the scope, which is of the OECD, guidelines, which is represent the most comprehensive, governmental back, standards, which is companies are expected to uphold. For example, the human rights due diligence, which is identify, prevent, mitigate, and address human rights impact across their values chain, and also transparency and public disclosures, which is reporting clearly and honestly, and policies risk and performance, and non-discriminations also, which is promote diversity, gender equity, and also a respect for the majority rights. On the other hand, the environment responsibility, which is access and manage, environmental impact, including climate risk, for example. Respect for labor's right also, we can add, which is uphold the international labor organizations, which is ILO core, which is including the freedom of associations and eliminations of force and labor, or child labor, let's say. So through the case, which is Shell in Nigeria, which is have a civil, regarding to the civil society, organizations, which is failed to complain, with UK NCP, which is citing the Shell alleged, to the in environment, for example, and the human rights violations regarding to this case. So the outcomes of these case, which is although the NCP, could not enforce penalties, this case targets significant, public pressure and media attentions, which is leading Shell to revise, its human rights policies and enhance its reporting practices. So this early case, we can see, which is demonstrates the reputational and strategic influence of these guidelines, or the even without legal enforcement, and rephrase the NCPS platforms for dialogue, or let's say accountability. So I can summarize regarding to this case. These guidelines of OECD, provide a powerful, global references point for responsibility, or responsible for businesses, which is especially, for the multinational enterprises, which is navigating complex legal and social environment landscape. I can actually I have some schedule or templates regarding to the key, steps or of the HRDD, which is considered as a principle. You can just go through the template, the first template, which is regarding the human rights due diligence, which is core process. We can say the step which is identify actual or potential advices, human rights impact. And as in explanations or practical examples, we can see that this across operations and supply chain, which is focused variable, groups like markets, human rights, women's, children's, and so on. Which is, as a practical example, a coffee brand which is maps, risk of child labor and its Central American supply chain. So this is as an example. And regarding to the track effectiveness, of measures, we can say as an examples, textile companies tracks, which is injuries, rates and wages compliance with their principles or with their rank, which is really affecting or consider a core principle or a process for implementing human rights. Also regarding to the practical tools for implementing, HRD, which is considered as a tools used across the industries to translate, principle into the concentrate actions. As a tools, we can say that risk assessment tools, shareholders mapping and consultations, human rights aligned code of conduct. These also, as a descriptions for each one of them, we can say that really they are affecting as main principles, to the implementing, the human rights grow labor or grow businesses. So. As a result, I can mention that measurable environments, in working conditions across key and earning variable, media coverage and recognitions, for proactive transparency and also achieve preferred supplier states under the human rights and responsibility, which is considered in this case, the highlight or the, let's say, highlights, how proactive human rights and due diligence, and not only let's say mitigates risk, but also creates strategic businesses value. So we can say that, also through the whatever I mentioned as a parallel or as a point in my presentations, we can see how the human rights affecting in the process and linked to the each one of the environment in work or reputations and economic as well. So actually, I just have to mention also regarding to the digital, for example, justice, which is as a digital platform, and technologies become, as you mentioned, to the modern, as you can see, regarding to the, it's become really essential to the modern economics, which is a human rights challenge, have expanded into the digital, phases, which is, let's say, including data protections and privacy, as an example, and mass, for example, tracking, pace, auto decisions, making like through the system, and also the human rights. Like implementations, which is violations of privacy rights, which is linked to the SDGs, number 16, and which is through the data collection. So discriminatory, which is influence hiring, crediting score, and law enforcement, and so on. Also using of facial recognitions, or data without informed and voluntary consent. So this is really linked to the digital justice, how we can, we linked between the AI, or digital practices and human rights. Also, regarding to the labor justice, I can mention that labor rights are like a cornerstone, for the human dignity. So particularly in Gulf economics, for example, where migrant works, from the significant portion of labor force, which is urgent challenge, which is includes, like, for example, wages left or delay payments, hazard working conditions, which is especially in constructing or constructions during extreme, heat. Yani, I can say in Bahrain now uh, like they have legitimate new law, which is for laborers to work not from morning to afternoon, but at night time. This is actually implement or enforce in heat weathers, so this is yani indirectly implementing human rights regarding to the environment of work. So also let's say absence of effective governance mechanisms, this is also affecting labors, or labor justice, as I mentioned. So the corporate responsibility measures, which is ensuring ethical recruitment, by prohibiting illegal like, let's say, placement fees, establishing multi compliant, to the through the mechanisms, which is accessible to the all workers, and also align the corporate labor policies with ILO core conventions, which is linked to the SDG, number 8, which is calls for safe and secure workers environment for all employees. So this is all together, uh, consider these three domains, which is environment, digital, and labor justice, from the ethical foundations of moderate, let's say, modern, responsibility business. So the companies that these obligations, not only reduce risk, but also enhance long-term value of this trust. So if I want to conclude, as a conclusion, or as a call to action, which is I can close with human rights are not, an ad or an add-on, they are a foundations of sustainable and inclusive business. These like, for let's say, they are moral compasses, or operational core and strategic framework of 21st century, for business model. And also let's say, regarding to the delivering this slowly, or with emphasis, with mirroring and the structure of your like my let's say my entire talk. We must move, from compliance to the commitment, from policy to practical, from impact to share value. This is final progressions, which is a journey, through the international framework. Yeah, I'm also done. So thank you so much for
Oh,
this
sorry.
your
Okay,
patience.
thank you, Assistant Professor Dr. Husham Alawsi, for your presentation. Now, let me introduce you the fourth speaker, Ms. Kayla Winarsky McKenzie. Ms. Kayla Winarsky McKenzie is from the Azhar Human Rights. Working Group
Yeah.
USA. To the first speaker, you have 15 minutes to present your material. Time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Dr. Saeed. I think my materials will complement that. I'm going to replace the current share so I can start sharing my screen, and many thanks all for your time. Hopefully everyone can see that. I have had the pleasure of meeting Rina and Nukila through the Asia Pacific Innovators Forum. As noted, my name is Kayla Winarsky McKenzie. I am an associate director at BSR, a nonprofit consultancy. I am based in New York, and I advise companies all over the world on all things business and human rights. For today's session, where I'm very pleased to share with you, I will be spending 15 minutes helping participants utilize different tools to apply a gender lens to business and human rights. I'll start out by providing a bit of a background on business and human rights. I understand from Dr. Saeed's presentation that you are well versed in these principles, so we'll go quite quickly over them. I will then discuss how this applies to gender equality, and then how you can integrate this gender equality lens into the standards that we've discussed and the principles of business respecting human rights. Throughout today's presentation, I will share some of the key questions and strategies that we understand from the businesses that we work with when we apply these principles. I welcome any questions or feedback. I assume that everyone in the room is quite familiar with human rights standards, so I will simply note here that they are the basic rights inherent to everyone. When we talk about human rights, and throughout today's presentation, I will be using a very expansive definition. So not only the body integrity rights that we understand to be core to human rights, like life, liberty, anti-slavery, but also civil liberties. So freedom of thought, freedom of religion, the ability to participate in the political process, and also some of those basic needs like food, water, health, and housing. When we talk to companies, particularly when we speak to legal counsel, we try to explain that human rights are founded upon universal principles. The conduct that they protect is naturally protected by both countries in various forms of national and international law. So even though human rights themselves aren't coming from various hard laws, they're already integrated into these principles, and it's very likely that violations of human rights are also violations of other laws within a country. In terms of the core conventions that we speak to when we advise on human rights, of course, there are those documents from the International Bill of Human Rights. There are also a number of core conventions and declarations that we look to. So the International Covenant on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, of course, and I will be speaking about this in detail later on, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, a number of principles from the International Labor Organization. And then I also wanted to point out that Indigenous people's rights are absolutely essential for the field of business and human rights. Those core conventions that we look to, and I know there are several experts on these conventions in the room, are the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. We refer to this as UN DRIP, and also ILO Convention 169 for Indigenous and Tribal Peoples. I heard that Dr. Saeed was referring to the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, particularly the need to conduct effective due diligence, as well as the OECD guidelines for multinational enterprises. So just to quickly note that the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights are absolutely the most important document when it comes to business respect for human rights. This is really the core standard that companies are expected to apply. They're known as kind of the gold standard and the global standard on business and human rights. The UNGPs are technically voluntary or soft law, but we're seeing that international law legislation, regulation, reporting standards, and other guidelines like these OECD guidelines are increasingly aligned with the UNGPs. So for businesses managing their rights, using the UNGPs will really best position them to apply these other laws. The UNGPs themselves take a three-pillar framework, the state duty to protect human rights. I've heard references to this, the corporate responsibility to respect human rights, and the need for access to effective remedy. I heard Dr. Saeed kind of breaking down what effective remedy looks like. When I work with these principles, I'm really focusing on the fact that business is expected to respect human rights, and this means preventing, mitigating, and remediating their actions. I've included here one of the core principles from the UNGPs, that business enterprises should respect human rights, meaning that they should avoid infringing on the human rights of others, and they should address adverse human rights impacts of which they are involved. So this is super important and the core of my work. Where I want to spend quite a bit of time now is why we here, businesses, want to respect human rights. So as we know, respecting human rights is absolutely the right thing for businesses to do. It has major impact on people, workers, local communities, but we're also seeing from companies that it makes business sense for businesses to be respecting human rights. Why they feel this way, what we call the business case, why they think it's good business, really depends on the companies. But some of the typical benefits that we see for companies from respecting human rights include the ones that I've outlined here. So first, the fact that it will likely reduce legal risk. So as I noted, we are seeing these principles being integrated into law more and more. So being that there is this legal nexus, it helps companies reduce their legal risk by identifying and addressing minor issues before they become major crises. We also see that respecting human rights helps companies reduce the chance of operational disruptions, because this will stop them or help them from getting ahead of, for example, protests from local communities, public campaigns, or international criticism. We see that companies have a lot of reputational benefits from being leaders in an area that a lot of external stakeholders, whether this is the media, local communities, or their employees, feel very strongly about. On that note, we see that respecting human rights helps businesses obtain greater interest and also retention of their top talent, their employees, by showing that they demonstrate and respect supporting human rights. We actually found a statistic that 56% of the millennial generation will refuse to work for organizations if they don't support their values, their standards, or their conduct. So this is really an important statistic for businesses. We also note for public companies that respecting human rights helps them meet their investor expectations because they will be adhering to international standards of business case. We are really seeing a proliferation of third-party benchmarks that are being used to monitor businesses and show people whether they are or are not respecting human rights. And then finally, for businesses, respecting human rights helps them get ahead of regulatory moves. As I noted, there are a number of countries that are starting to have their own legal codes of conduct for due diligence, and respecting human rights helps companies ensure that they are in compliance with these laws as they come to force. So this is why we are understanding from businesses that it's beneficial to respect human rights, aside from the most important reason, which we already know, which is that human rights are very important and businesses already have this responsibility from the UNGPs. I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about gender equality and how this relates to human rights as well. I know that this is an important focus for the group, and I wanted to explain how this comes into the framework of business and human rights more generally. We understand that gender equality is at its heart already a human rights issue and has a lot of support from international standards and frameworks. I know this session will be focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals, so just to say that this is, of course, a prerequisite for achieving SDG 5 on gender equality, but then a lot of the frameworks that I've already highlighted include important provisions on gender. So the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, these core conventions, of course, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. And then we also see the Women's Empowerment Principles as a very essential set of principles that actually guide businesses and the actions that they can take to promote gender equality. This is a very helpful resource, and businesses appreciate some of the core metrics that come from the Women's Empowerment Principles because it allows them to measure their performance. And noting as well that the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, which I've already noted provide this framework for preventing human rights abuses, have a companion document, the gender dimension for the UNGPs, which highlights specifically gender empowerment within this international framework by promoting accountability, transparency, and respect for human rights in business operations. At the same time, I do want to acknowledge the gender gap that does exist in the world of work, how some of this systemic differences in opportunities, resources, and rights leads to different outcomes for women and gender diverse people in the workplace. So I provided at a very high level some of the constraints which do make it more difficult for women in the workplace and have implications on the human rights of women. So noting that there are different social norms which might make it more difficult for women at the workplace. Some laws might be discriminatory and not protect women at work to the same degree it does men. A lot of the work that women often do in the form of care work goes unrecognized and can create barriers or constraints in the workplace. And also the gender gap in accessing financial systems, which is I know, very important to the work that Rina and Nukila are doing, can also create barriers for women. All of this might look like more women are in vulnerable or precarious working positions, taking on the majority of unpaid home or care work. This might result in a gender pay gap, underrepresentation at the highest levels of a company or in leadership, any type of domestic or sexual harassment or violence, and that we see women as being less likely or less empowered to own small or medium-sized enterprises. I've also noted a couple of statistics about how big companies are applying these standards, and I note that there are serious issues in terms of how global companies are respecting women's rights and applying these standards. We see that companies are not performing very well on gender equality. Women are often underrepresented, particularly in places of power. We see that top companies are kind of outperforming their peers in terms of public commitment. So some companies are very strong on having commitment to this. Not a lot of companies have global policies on parental leave, which can create difficulties in the workplace. We see that many companies publicly prohibit violence and harassment in their workplaces, but not a lot of them are really taking steps to address them, or as Dr. Saeed said, putting in place remedy or applications for remedy. And then we do see a lot of challenges for companies within their supply chain. So the people that they supply from, the companies they supply from, are expected to respect human rights and promote gender equality, but don't really have the capacity or the tools to ensure that this is something that's being applied. So there's still a lot of action that global businesses need to take to respect human rights. In order to provide a language and a framework for businesses to do that, it's important to take a gender lens to business and human rights, to understand that women are girls, and girls are often disproportionately affected by human rights abuses. noting the barriers that we discussed earlier and trying to find remedies to them, noting that women and girls from different communities or groups might be impacted differently than other women, so really taking an intersectional approach, and noting that measures that any states and businesses take to implement the UNGPs must take into account these gender considerations. So for this reason, businesses are encouraged to take gender responsive measures which address these barriers, which respect gender differences, which try to be sensitive to gender, ensuring that it's a wider strategy to advance gender equality, and trying to evolve to close gaps and eradicate gender-based violence. As I noted, one of the core frameworks for doing this is the gender dimensions of the UN Guiding Principles document. In 2017, a report from the UN Working Group released this document, which recognizes the importance of raising awareness on gender equality. This report develops a gender framework for the guiding principles, so it really makes sure that any work that companies are taking to respect human rights is gender responsive, so it's a very key document. And specifically, it says that businesses should carry out gender responsive assessments. So they should be doing assessments about how women specifically are impacted by their activities. And it should take gender transformative measures and remedies, which means it should take action that seeks to transform these negative impacts on women. I believe I have one more slide, and I know I'm coming up on my time for this afternoon. So I just wanted to provide a key overview of what this actually looks like in practice for when businesses seek to respect gender and women's rights. This is a 3-step cycle that really measures the principles from the UN Guiding Principles on human rights. So it asks businesses to take gender transformative measures, whether this is having a public commitment to respect women, to focus on rights-based empowerment, to eliminate discrimination and engage gender-sensitive experts. Women's organizations such as this one would be absolutely critical here. It also asks that businesses take gender transformative remedies, so engaging gender-sensitive experts to make sure that women are being heard and their rights are respected, engaging governments to reform laws that might be discriminatory, really trying to take action and be the change. And then finally, being gender responsive when you're undertaking assessment. So looking at the laws and the regulatory context, taking all of the information about how women are being impacted, considering intersectional discrimination. So as I noted, considering the different ways that different groups of women are being impacted, and then evaluating measures to about how effective these remedies truly are. So really trying to have all of the information there. That is the end of my presentation for today. I don't know if you would prefer for me to take questions or if I can turn over to our next speaker. Thank you so much for your time and for hearing me today.
Thank you, Ms. Kayla Winarsky McKenzie, for your presentation. So I can conclude that human rights matter for companies because it can reduce legal risk, reduce chance of operational disruption, reputational benefits, greater interest, and retention of talent, meet investor expectation, and get ahead of regulatory moves. So, I'm sorry, due to typhoon in Philippines, Dr. Theresita is having some trouble for internet connection. Maybe Miss Rina can continue to answer the question that Miss Ninne answered before.
Good day, everyone, and thank you for having us, Quezon City University, in this webinar. Our presentation for today will cover Quezon City University's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals and our responsibilities for communities. As an higher education institution, we are committed not only to academic excellence, but we are also deeply engaged in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals and upholding the principles of human rights within our local communities. For inclusive and equitable education, which is SDG 4, QCU serves as a moral compass and force for social good. For our 12,000 students, we offer free and accessible higher education and these are underprivileged students in Quezon City. This year alone, we have given the entrance examination to 19,980, with only 2,314 applicants who passed. And of those who took the entrance exam, no, about 10,073 of them would have been first generation college graduates or students of their families. According to our survey, 54% of our graduates, of the 1,875 graduates last July 1,013 of them were first generation college graduates, meaning to say they're the first members of their family who earned a degree. Their parents or siblings have not earned any degree yet. Also, we have provided the Bachelor of Science in Entrepreneurship program for persons deprived of liberty in our female dormitory. Last year, we have graduated 19 female deprived of liberty. And this coming September, we will have graduated 41 more persons deprived of liberty. We provide scholarships and academic support for the marginalized sectors. Quezon City Local Government Unit Scholarship Program provides an allowance or a stipend of 10,000 pesos a year, which has increased from semester to semester to about 48% of our students, or 5,108 grantees. In Gender Equality and Non-Discrimination, or SDG 5 and SDG 10, we empower all genders, we embrace equity in education. So we have so many activities during the World Women's Month, including men opposed to violence against women and women everywhere. We conduct gender and development activities, not only for our students, but for all our employees as well. We also provided Digital Beauty Academy training in the Digital Beauty Academy training for 609 females and 163 males. 15 belonging to the LGBT community and 28 composed of persons with disability and parents of those with disability. This is in partnership with Spark Philippines, L'Oreal Philippines, that we offered 2 to 3 months of various training sessions in beauty for students, for solo parents, persons with disability. The Digital Beauty Academy actually trains them in hair care, makeup, responsible digital marketing through TikTok Philippines. So in total, we have 815 graduates in the Digital Beauty Academy. We also have safe spaces and gender sensitivity policies in the university. For decent work, economic empowerment and innovation, which is SDG 8 and SDG 9, we bring education to livelihood with dignity and inclusion. The framework that we are using is actually local government unit, or the Quezon City government, headed by our mayor, Mayor Joy Belmonte, and our vice mayor, Vice Mayor Gian Soto, the Quezon City University, and our community partners. Our initiatives are actually anchored on the trisectoral collaboration model, where the local government provides policy direction, funding, and administrative support. Our university offers the academic and research-based interventions, whereas our community groups, including our barangay partnerships, implement and sustain the efforts on the ground. The partnership model supports several SDGs, particularly SDG 11, 13, and 17. Based on this model, our Quezon City University Center for Urban Agriculture and Innovation has completed various community training and extension programs. We provide seedlings. Aside from the training, we also do research in partnership with the Department of Science and Technology of our country, as well as the Department of Agriculture Training Institute funded initiatives. So we host seed libraries in the university and provide more model urban farm plots. Um, we have also supported micro enterprises and innovation projects with our local community. For the out of school youth, we have conducted Be Your Own Boss training on entrepreneurship, and we have actually assisted them, the 130 graduates of the Be Your Own Boss training in the university, to avail of financial support that is awarded by Quezon City government. And this financial support is allows them to get as much as 20,000 pesos um, for business plan or a program that they want to implement. So that this becomes their like their seed capital. We empower communities to our ergonomic innovation. This initiative combines service learning with engineering and innovation by engaging our students and faculty in a meaningful effort to assess and improve the design of ergonomic carts for our informal workers or ambulant vendors. In urban sustainability and community engagement, or SDG 11 and SDG 17, we advance rice-based innovation in urban and digital development through our partnerships. Our flagship initiative, the Quezon City University Center for Agriculture and Innovation, serves as a key innovation hub where our students and communities co-create solutions to food security. um, the center actually conducts training in organic farming, composting, seed saving. We also host seed libraries and urban farm plots, um, smart greenhouses that were developed by our engineering and information technology students. We collaborate with our barangays or kampongs and community organizations to replicate these farming models. Its four functional areas include training, research and development, partnerships and collaborations, and production and business development. That's why this is our strategic framework. Now, as you will see, this is what we do at the Center for Urban Agriculture and Innovation. We do research, not only in partnership with local communities, but also with national government agencies. Our training is not only given to local community farms, but also to other educational institutions, um, non-government organizations. We produce um, innovative products and try to develop this in a as a business through our entrepreneurship program. And we are able to do this through partnerships and collaborations. So, by way of training, we organize programs to equip individuals with skills for sustainable urban agriculture and agripreneurship in collaboration with our academic and extension office. So, it's our students who work with the community, teach them about entrepreneurships, or our students developing new products that can help, that can be taught to the community so that this can somehow augment the income of our less privileged or underprivileged communities. So, as number of participants so far has been 2,229, with females outnumbering the males at 1,601, and male participants at 628. We do research and development. We have conducted cutting edge research to innovate urban farming. we provide our engineering students have developed alternative sources of energy, solar power in particular, and provide this to the community farmers. And we say we enhance sustainable agriculture in the city. We forge partnerships with communities, government, and industry to collaborate with experts and businesses, enhancing knowledge exchange and fostering participation in sustainable urban agriculture. We collaborate with the academic sector to create innovative agricultural products, support urban farmers in market access, and partner with businesses for distribution, so that we say that we can drive community economic growth. Um, So far, from 2021, we have expanded networks and linkages. We have signed memorandum of agreements and memorandum of understanding. To date, we have MOU with 94 institutions, public and private as well, including the Philippine Military Academy. And we also have local and international academic institutions as partner. And with that, we have actually partnered with 67. And for community organizations, we've partnered with 64 community organizations. No? These are the logos of some of our partners in the university, including the USAID, uh, the Department of Science and Technology, the Commission on Higher Education, the Department of Interior and Local Government, Maynilad Water Academy, Life Skills Philippines, the Asia Pacific Consortium of Researchers and Education and Educators, Philippine Military Academy, and the Philippine National Volunteer Service Coordinating Agency, among others. Our participation in the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings has improved. This so far you can see on screen our current rating, and we have been newly ranked in 6 SDGs, in 7 SDGs. We have seen an improvement in SDG 17, or partnerships, at ranking 601. We have also good ranking in in SDG 1, or no poverty, and in climate action, or SDG 13. In peace, justice, and strong institutions, or SDG 16, we empower barangays through just and resilient actions. We have conducted the Quezon City Peace and Order and Public Safety Council trainings for the out of school, for not only for out of school youth, but for youth leaders in Quezon City. So far, on an annual basis, we conduct trainings to 200 youth leaders, so that in 2023 we have conducted we have provided training to 900 youth leaders and 200 barangay officials or barangay leaders. We have also done our expanded executive course for barangay leaders on system delivery support for the out-of-school youth. This is a program that was funded by the USAID. We have conducted training to our own barangay officials in Quezon City, including all the representatives from all our 142 barangays. But we also did training of trainers in Pasig City here in Metro Manila, and through the City College of Angeles in Angeles City, which is a city about um, an hour and a half drive from Metro Manila. So we have conducted the training of trainers, and they were also able to train their own barangay leaders in their respective areas. We have championed good governance through the Speaker Feliciano Belmonte School of Good Governance, and conducted trainings, executive course on organizational management. In 2024, there were 326 graduates of public management and leadership for public service. These are all barangay officials or local community officials. This year, we have 320 enrollees, new enrollees. That's why we can say we have covered all the 142 barangays of the city. 85 of those currently enrolled are barangay captains and barangay kagawad or officials number 627. At QCU, our commitment to human rights and the SDG is not just a policy. We say it's a practice. It lives in our classrooms, thrives in our communities, and shapes the leaders we prepare for tomorrow. Thank you very much and for your kind attention and for having Quezon City University in this platform. Maraming salamat po. Terima kasih.
So that is from Dr. Theresita V. Atienza. Thank you for the presentation. Then you can continue the question before. There's a question for Ms. Rina. In Rempang case, the society is divided into these pros and contra against to the relocation initiatives. In this regard, how business can contribute to this contra society?
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so we continue the discussion then. Okay, as I mentioned in my presentation, there are two groups in Rempang. There are pro relocation and then contra the relocation. So those people who are pro in relocation, the national investor Petamek is already invest some of their fundings under the CSR and then giving training to the women there. So now this is the problem about those who are still stay in their ancestral land. Okay, so that's why Nukila and I, and also thank you from Kayla is our mentor, okay, who guided us what to do for this group. So we try to seek for funding to help them, in particular how to train them, the women, so they can be economically independent. Because the government is more focused on those who are in the relocation area, and also the PTMEC as the business, as the corporations also give the CSR in that relocation area. So those who are not those who don't want to remove from their ancestral land, they stay there. So that's why my project with Nukila and also supported by other UIB professors and friends, we try to find funds. We ask for the CSR from different companies, okay, so we can also give them training. So one of the company, it's not really a company, but it's more an NGO from Japan, would like to fund some of the activities there. I think inshallah in September, it's going to fund for the training for the women there. So we would like to have the project. So for me and Nukila, our project, it doesn't matter whether they are in relocation areas or non-relocation area, as long as they're the women in the coastal areas, and we would like to give them a workshop, trainings, and then also teach them how to market their products so they can be independent economically and contribute to their family. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rina. So we are about to come to an end of this meeting. What a great insight and knowledge from our outstanding speakers today. I believe we all learned a new knowledge today. So the last session, closing remarks from Assistant Prof. Rina. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Viona, and thank you so much for all the speakers, those from the Philippines, even with the video. Very sorry, Prof. Terry keep testing me, and she said that she had to meet the mayor, the mayor of the Manila city, because there was a typhoon. I think it's still going on. There's a typhoon in Manila, and in particular in the Quezon area. So that's why she only sent the video, and I would like to thank Kayla, okay, for, I know this very early in the morning in US, but thank you so much that you would like to join us, and also to Professor, our colleagues from Bahrain, okay, even if there was an accident for her mother, and then she said that she would have to rush to the hospital to see her mother. Thank you very much because she could, join us. And also Ibu Ninne, our partner, from WWG, Mbak Nukila, who make this event continue up to the series 14. Inshallah, for the next series, we would like to ask the participants here or even the speakers here if you can be our next speakers or join us as a participants, because there are many things that we would like to discuss relating to gender and human rights. Okay, thank you so much again. Special to Viona, okay, as our alumni from Master of Law students who take, the part in this program as the moderator and Master of Ceremony. Back to you, Fiona. Thank you so much to everyone.
Okay. So this is an end of International Sharing Forum on Human Rights and Gender Series, entitled Business and Human Rights, Commitment to SDGs and Responsibility for Communities. I am so thankful for the presence of the speaker. That's all for today. Thank you for all the participants. See you in another webinar. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye. Bye,
Bye. Thank
everyone.
you very much.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.